In this episode, we're going to focus on something that sounds simple on the surface, but gets messy fast in real life. Keeping data only as long as you should, and getting rid of it safely when it's time. Most people naturally think about security as locking things up, but good security also includes knowing when to stop holding on to information. The longer you keep data, the longer it can be lost, stolen, misused, or accidentally exposed. At the same time, deleting the wrong thing too early can break business processes, violate legal obligations, or erase proof you needed to keep. The goal here is balance. Retain what you must, dispose of what you no longer need, and do both in a way that can be shown and trusted. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyber.author.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. To start, let's make the basic idea clear. Data retention is the decision to keep information for a defined period of time, and data disposal is the process of removing it when that period ends. Retention is not the same as backup, and disposal is not the same as just clearing a folder. Retention is about purpose and responsibility, like keeping customer invoices for a set number of years or keeping system logs long enough to investigate incidents. Disposal is about making sure information is actually gone in a way that matches the risk, not just hidden or forgotten. If you picture your data like items in a storage unit, retention is the label that says how long each box stays. And disposal is the method you use to get rid of the box so it does not linger in a corner where someone can still open it later. Why does this matter so much for security? Because most security problems are made worse by too much data living too long in too many places. Every copy of a file is another thing to protect, another thing to monitor, and another thing that can leak. When organizations keep everything forever because it feels safer, they often create a larger attack surface without realizing it. Old datasets might contain sensitive details that are no longer needed, like outdated contact lists, old identity documents, or historical credentials stored in documents. Even when the data is not obviously sensitive, it can become sensitive when combined with other pieces. Good retention and disposal reduce the amount of material an attacker can grab and reduce the amount of harm that can happen during an incident. A common misunderstanding is that retention is only about laws and compliance. Legal requirements are a big reason retention rules exist, but they are not the only reason. A business might keep certain data for customer service, for troubleshooting, for financial records, or for internal accountability. Another misunderstanding is that disposal is a one-time cleanup project. In reality, retention and disposal are ongoing behaviors that should run in the background as part of normal operations. Think about email, collaboration tools, cloud storage, and ticketing systems. New data is created every minute, which means the decision to keep or remove information must also happen continuously, not only during an annual cleanup week. Now let's bring in automation, because without it, these goals are almost impossible at scale. Automation means using systems to apply retention rules and disposal actions reliably, based on defined triggers and time windows. The core idea is consistency. The same type of data should be treated the same way every time, regardless of who created it or where it lives. Automation helps prevent the two extremes that cause trouble, forgetting to delete things forever or deleting things inconsistently in a way that destroys trust. It also helps with speed, because manual review of every file, message, and record would never keep up with real workloads. When automation is designed well, it becomes a quiet safety mechanism that reduces risk without constant human effort. But automation needs boundaries, because you do not want a system deleting important records simply because a timer ran out. This is where approvals come in, and approvals are not just a checkbox for bureaucracy. Approvals are a decision point that says someone with the right authority reviewed what should happen and accepted the consequences. The right approver depends on what the data is and why it exists. Sometimes that means a business owner approves retention periods. Sometimes it means legal approves for regulatory requirements. And sometimes it means security approves disposal methods for high-risk data. The key is that approvals should be explicit, documented, and tied to a clear rule, not handled as informal conversations that cannot be traced later. It also helps to understand that retention and disposal are not one-size-fits-all, because different kinds of data have different risks. Some data is public or low impact, like marketing images or general documentation, and disposal can be straightforward. Other data is highly sensitive, like authentication secrets, medical details, payment data, or internal investigations, and disposal must be strict. In practice, organizations often group information into categories so they can apply consistent rules. Even as a beginner, you can think in simple buckets like operational records, customer records, financial records, security logs, and intellectual property. Each bucket tends to have different reasons to exist and different consequences if it is kept too long or disposed of incorrectly. Safe disposal itself has levels. At a basic level, disposal might mean deleting a record so it is no longer available in the normal interface. But for sensitive data, safe disposal means making it unrecoverable using reasonable methods, which may require specialized processes depending on where the data lives. For example, deleting a file does not necessarily remove it from backups, caches, versions, or synchronized devices. Disposal also looks different for paper documents than it does for digital records, and it looks different for local devices than it does for cloud services. The important beginner takeaway is that safe disposal must match the storage medium and the sensitivity, and it must consider copies, not just the main file you see. This is exactly why audit evidence matters. Audit evidence is the proof you can show that rules existed, approvals happened, automation was configured, and actions occurred as expected. Evidence matters because security is not just about believing the system worked, it is about being able to demonstrate it. If someone asks, "How do you know you deleted those records on time?" you need more than confidence. You need logs, reports, or records that show what happened, when it happened, and under what approved policy. Good audit evidence also helps you catch problems early, like retention rules that are not applied to a new data store or disposal processes that silently fail. A useful way to picture audit evidence is like a receipt trail for data decisions. A receipt trail includes the policy that defines retention, the record of who approved that policy, the configuration that makes the policy real in systems, and the logs that show outcomes. If your policy says customer support tickets are retained for a certain number of years, the evidence should show that the ticketing system is configured to enforce that window. If a disposal job runs monthly, the evidence should show each run and what it affected. If exceptions exist, the evidence should show why and who approved them. Without this trail, you end up with security theater, where people say the right words but cannot prove the right actions. Exceptions are another area where beginners often get tripped up. Real organizations constantly face cases where data should be kept longer than usual, like a legal hold during a dispute or an ongoing investigation. An exception is not automatically bad, but it must be controlled. That means defining who can request it, who can approve it, how long it lasts, and what happens when it ends. Exceptions should be visible, not hidden in someone's inbox. If exceptions are unmanaged, they become permanent, and the whole retention program slowly collapses into keep everything forever. A strong approvals process plus clear audit evidence is what prevents exceptions from turning into quiet loopholes. Let's connect all of this to a simple, high-level workflow that makes sense even if you are brand new. First, you decide what data categories exist and why they are kept, which leads to retention rules. Next, you decide how each category should be disposed of when it expires, which leads to disposal methods. Then you configure automation so the rules and methods actually run without relying on memory. After that, you build approval points where needed, especially for sensitive categories, unusual actions, or exceptions. Finally, you collect audit evidence as a normal output of the process, like logs and reports, so you can show what happened later. The technical details vary by environment, but this logic stays the same. It is also important to notice the human side of the problem. People keep data because it feels useful, because they fear being blamed if something is missing, or because deleting feels irreversible. Those instincts are normal, but unmanaged instincts create risk. A good retention and disposal program reduces fear by making the rules predictable and fair. It tells people, if you store information in the approved place, the system will keep it for the right amount of time, and if it must be kept longer, there is a clear way to request that. When people trust the process, they are less likely to create hidden personal archives that escape automation. That trust becomes a security control, even though it does not look like one at first glance. As you build intuition, one of the most practical questions to ask is, can we explain and prove this decision later? If you cannot explain why data is kept, it is a sign the retention rule may be missing. If you cannot prove that disposal happened, it is a sign the process may be unreliable. If approvals are informal, it is a sign accountability is unclear. And if audit evidence is scattered or inconsistent, it is a sign the organization will struggle during audits, investigations, or incident response. Retaining and disposing safely is not glamorous, but it is foundational because it shapes how much sensitive material is available to be exposed and how confidently you can answer questions about what you did. To close, safe retention and disposal are about deliberate control over the full life of information, not just protection while it is in use. Automation makes the process consistent and scalable. Approvals create accountability for decisions that have consequences, and audit evidence makes the whole system trustworthy. When these three pieces work together, an organization reduces risk, limits unnecessary exposure, and avoids the chaos of manual cleanup and guesswork. Even as a beginner, you can remember the big picture. Keep what you must for clear reasons, remove what you no longer need in a way that matches the risk, and leave behind proof that the right thing happened. That combination turns data from a growing liability into something you can manage with confidence.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.